I get called DEI all day, every day. There was no edict from anyone at ESPN to say, oh man, you know what we really need? An Asian female NFL analyst. I was a business journalist and investigative reporter for Fortune magazine, Bloomberg, Business Week, but I also love football, and I wrote a personal essay about football. And the editors at ESPN magazine reached out to me and said, hey, we're trying to think outside the box and expand our scope because we want some different viewpoints and to find talent in different places we hadn't considered. Would you ever consider switching to being a sports writer? That is what diversity, equity, inclusion is all about. So I joined ESPN as a sports writer, something I never thought I would do. And then from there, I went on to pivot into doing analysis, built my career as an analyst, and that's what I do now. So I just wanted to bring that up because, I am a person who's representative of DEI. And
ladies and gentlemen, this is how ESPN's substandard coverage of the NFL draft started. Their coverage started by the supposed face of NFL coverage at ESPN, the pretender of all pretenders, all but admitting she's not qualified for her job. Mina Kimes openly insinuated that she is not qualified to analyze the NFL, which is something that we have been saying here on the channel for years now. As it turns out, Mina Kimes and Uncle KC aren't the only ones that know she's not qualified to analyze the NFL. Going into the NFL draft, ESPN issued a press release that described some of the qualifications of this elite group that was attempting to cover the draft. Ryan Clark, he was rightfully described as a Super Bowl champion. Dan Orlovsky, Marcus Spears, they were described as picks in the 2005 NFL draft. You see, these dudes actually played in the NFL. They've been inside NFL locker rooms. They've been inside the huddle. They can provide insight that 99.9% of the population is not qualified to give. How did ESPN describe Mina Kimes? Our diversity hire is qualified to analyze the NFL because she is a groundbreaking analyst and podcaster. Groundbreaking analyst? How is Mina Kimes a groundbreaking analyst? The only groundbreaking thing she did was accept a job that she wasn't qualified for. And if being a podcaster is all it takes to analyze the NFL at ESPN, then Uncle KC is more qualified than Mina Kimes. And believe me, I'm not qualified. Believe it or not, Mina Kimes was not the worst thing with ESPN's substandard coverage of the NFL draft this weekend. Matter of fact, I don't know if Mina Kimes would even qualify for the doofus top 10 at ESPN, which would be something else she fails to qualify for. This network is an absolute disaster. For 3 days, numerous woke welfare collectors at ESPN pretended that Shedeur Sanders falling into the 5th round of the draft was some grand conspiracy against the black man in the NFL. To my knowledge, and to his credit, I don't think Shedeur Sanders has bit into the shit sandwich. From what I have seen, Shedeur Sanders has taken this like a man. He even admitted that he could have handled things differently through the interview process going into the draft. But that did not stop ESPN from once again accusing the NFL of mythical racism in what was one of the worst weekends of sports coverage that I have ever seen. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. I appreciate you guys sticking with me this weekend as I continue to fight off the flu. I know my voice has got to sound terrible, and to make matters worse, I don't feel capable of performing to my usual standard, but you know, this is the best I can give you right now. I'm going to try to rest the remainder of today. Hopefully, I'll be back to 100% tomorrow, but I appreciate you guys sticking with me through this weekend. One of the reasons that I don't get into the NFL draft, it's nothing but uninformed speculation. For months, these so-called experts at ESPN predict where players will be drafted. It's nothing but wasted time because in the vast majority of cases, they're always wrong. According to ESPN, Mike Kiper is the expert of experts for the NFL draft. But my name is Mel Kiper. It doesn't matter what your name is. After watching 3 days of his disastrous coverage this weekend, after 3 days of watching Mel, him obsess over Shedeur Sanders, it would not surprise me if this is the last draft that Mel Kiper covers. Let me ask you something. What qualifies Mel, him as an expert on the NFL draft? Does anyone know his qualifications? If you placed bets on Mel and his mock draft, you know what you would be? Bankrupt. From 2005 to 2008, Mel Kiper correctly predicted just 25% of the picks in the first round. By 2014, Mel had that number down to a cool 23%. 2 years ago, 2023, of the 32 selections in the first round, Mel Kiper correctly guessed one pick out of 32. This is your expert. This is the so-called expert at ESPN. Mel Kiper couldn't hit Shamu's ass with a forklift. This dude has made a career and millions of dollars in the process of being wrong. Yet somehow, Captain Doofus is treated as a draft expert by ESPN. But it wasn't the incorrect draft selections that bothered me this weekend. What bothered me this weekend was Mel Kiper and ESPN obsessing over Shedeur Sanders and robbing everyone else of their moment. Cam Ward was the number 1 pick in the draft. He was completely overshadowed this weekend. Travis Hunter was the number 2 pick. ESPN didn't care. All those young men who were drafted in the 2nd, 3rd rounds, ESPN stole their moment because they couldn't stop obsessing over Shedeur Sanders. And when I say they, I'm mainly talking about Mel Kiper. Yesterday, Reese Davis finally had enough. After 2 days of listening to this grown man obsess over another dude, after 2 days of incessant whining and complaining, Reese Davis finally had enough. He told Mel Kiper that yelling at the NFL over their unwillingness to draft Shedeur Sanders, that was not the answer. Fortunately, though, for the viewers at home, Mel Kiper had the answer. Of course, since this is Mel Kiper, the professional at getting damn near everything wrong, he responds to Reese Davis with the wrong answer. Watch it for yourself.
This is personal. And we know that it is an off-the-field issue. No, you have not. Mel, you don't have to sell it to me. No, I don't know what we're talking about here. You're right, something. You're right. Yes. You're right, but you know what? Mel, the draft has spoken.
That's right. That's the key, Mel. It's not putting a value judgment on whether those who passed are right or wrong. They did. Yep. So now, whenever you're in circumstances in life, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, whether they're fair or whether they're unfair, you might have to deal with them.
That's
and
right.
now Shedeur Sanders has to deal with it. Yelling at the NFL about it is not
not a quarterback. Boomer Esiason was not happy when he was a second round pick.
I'm
Brady was not happy. They dropped. How'd they turn out?
And you know what? Nobody's arguing that
My
can
point
happen.
is, the NFL has been clueless for 50 years when it comes to evaluating quarterback. Clueless. No idea what they're doing in terms of evaluating quarterback. That's proof. There's proof of that.
How many
times we know exactly what we're talking about with quarterback? They don't.
Let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The 32 head coaches and general managers who have dedicated their careers to building professional football teams. The head coaches, general managers, who are currently holding 32 of the most difficult jobs in the country to obtain. Those dudes, they have no idea what they're doing, but Mel Kiper has all the answers? Mel Kiper is smarter than them? Mel Kiper is the wizard of analyzing the quarterback position? If that's the case, how come NFL teams aren't clamoring to hire Mel Kiper? If he's the expert, how come he has never been hired by an NFL team? The reason Mel Kiper has spent the last 40 years working at ESPN and not working in the NFL, it's because he doesn't know shit. His main achievement, his only contribution to the NFL is basically inventing the mock draft. You know why they call it a mock draft? Because it's not real. Unfortunately for ESPN, their coverage of the draft on social media, it was even worse than their coverage on television. Stephen A. Smith, who admittedly knows next to nothing about the NFL, Stevie's biggest contribution to the substandard coverage of the NFL at ESPN is making fun of the Dallas Cowboys. Yesterday, Stevie decided to provide his expert analysis as to why Shedeur Sanders dropped to the 5th round. According to Stevie, this is another Colin Kaepernick situation. This is another example of the NFL colluding to keep a black man out of the league. Watch for yourself.
You're the National Football League. Clearly, it's not about talent anymore. It's about something else. And I'm going to tell you, I spent a large amount of the last 24 hours thinking about nothing more than I was thinking about collusion. How in the hell does 32 teams in the National Football League pass on a quarterback that was universally recognized one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the country entering this draft, and 32 teams passed on him? Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 different times they passed on him. How the hell does that happen? Seems very Kaepernick-like, as in Colin Kaepernick.
This is the face of ESPN accusing the NFL of collusion to keep Shedeur Sanders out of the league. This is the face of ESPN essentially accusing the NFL of mythical racism. But it wasn't just Stevie accusing the NFL of fake racism. Some dork named Peter Rosenberg took it a step further. Now, for those that don't know, Peter Beater is a proud WWE analyst. He analyzes the world of make-believe. He pays very, very close attention to men in their underwear. One of Petey's biggest career achievements, it's the destruction of Hot 97 in New York City. Hot 97 used to be the premier radio station in New York, but ever since Peter Beater and his friend Ebro took over, Hot 97 has become a huge embarrassing failure. When he's not tanking ratings on Hot 97 or analyzing dudes' underwear in WWE, Petey works at ESPN Radio, where he provides his expert analysis on sports. Expert analysis like this. Check it out for yourself. According to Petey, Shedeur Sanders collapsed in the draft because white people are afraid of him. White America is afraid of the black man. White people are hiding. They're afraid of marginalized victims. Last night, I responded to Pete and asked for a list of white people who were afraid of Shedeur Sanders. Unfortunately, I never received a response. I'm guessing I didn't receive a response because Pete couldn't find a single white person who was afraid of Shedeur Sanders. This was just a small glimpse of ESPN's substandard coverage of the NFL Draft. Warren Sharp, he put together a 9-minute compilation of Mel Kiper obsessing over Shedeur Sanders. 9 minutes of a grown man obsessing over another dude. The same Mel Kiper who claimed that Julio Jones wasn't short-handed enough to trade up for in 2011. Same Mel Kiper that claimed David Carr was going to be the cornerstone of the Texans franchise back in 2002. Same Mel Kiper that promised to quit, promised to walk away from covering the NFL if Jimmy Clausen was not a successful quarterback. Here we are 15 years later, and Mel Kiper is still doing what he does best, getting everything wrong. ESPN is a disgrace. This network is an embarrassment. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.